Today, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, I'm gonna finally be decorating the interior of my village castle. It's been standing here empty for way too long, so if you want to see more builds like this and join me on my quest to make the most ambitious survival world of all time, hit that subscribe button and maybe even like the video. But without any further ado, let's get right into it. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time, but it's finally time, and I am very excited to get this place dressed up because it is very empty in here. And we actually have quite a bit of space to work with here. As you guys can see, I haven't done a lick of interior decorating. But luckily, as always, I have a fantastic plan. Now, I know I said we have a lot of space to work with, but for the size of castle that we actually have, it's not that much space. Like, during my planning for this place, there's not actually that much space for all the different rooms that I'd like to include, so we might have to make a few down below deck, so to speak. And if we dig this block out, that is actually perfect. We do have a whole ton of space to build a kitchen down here. So where do we even start with a giant build like this? Obviously, we do want a whole ton of different rooms. We seem to be missing a door right here too. But some rooms that I know for certain that we're going to want is a throne room going in here. We'll probably put some guards barracks down below as well, just since we're kind of pressed for space. The towers themselves here are pretty much going to have to be staircases all the way up and down, both these small ones, so we can't do too much with that space, which really, aside from the throne room building, only leaves the giant tower right here. Now, luckily, there's a lot of space in here, so we can have our grand dining hall right here, and then have the door right there and the door right there lead up to the tower. And up there, I plan to have the living quarters. So if we can have the living quarters up here, kitchen and dining area down here, that pretty much gives us everything we need. But in order to build any of this, we're going to need a whole ton of materials. So I've gathered up a ton of stuff that I think we might need, and you guys might notice that the shulker monster is gone. That's right, I cleaned it up. I'm proud of myself. What can I say? Pat myself on the back a little bit. So hopefully all this stuff is going to come in handy, and I think I know exactly where I want to start. So to begin with, maybe let's dress up these hallways a little bit, change up the floors, make some arch ceilings, and I will be right back with you guys. One of the beautiful things introduced to us in the 1.17 update, but that we're now swimming in as of 1.18, is of course deep slate. And I decided that the bottom floor is mostly going to consist of the regular deep slate top texture, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. There's also, of course, all the other beautiful variations of the block, and I decided to use the brick slabs in order to build prettier ceilings inside all the walls. And since we already have the lighting situation figured out with all the lanterns lining the outsides of these walls, we don't really have to do any more decorating with this, and I figured we'd get it out of the way before we start on the actual interior. But for right now, let's hop back into first person. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we've got the deep slate in right here, and I actually made a few more changes. You see, if we go over here, I decided to include kind of a stables area. So we're definitely gonna have to bring in some horses right here and make sure they can't get out, but I think this is an awesome little detail. We also have this door here, which leads over into the tower. And I do think that the insides of these towers is the next thing we have to tackle, because they're pretty monotonous tasks that we can get done in one go, and we can get to the detailed decorating later. Because there's not a whole ton of space in these towers, it's all about making sure the floors are accessible, and I even altered the entrance a bit to make that possible. After the first tower, I moved on to the other small tower that has a larger base, so there's a bit more space to fill, and I ended up making a closed-off staircase with some surrounding hallways. I then went in and decorated the staircase all the way up to the top of the tower, which I think we should take a look at in first person, so let me give you the tour of the towers. Alright, at this point we've decorated both of the small towers, and I figured I'd just give you guys a little bit of a look inside. If you guys weren't aware, I'm going to give out the world download in the next episode, so you're going to be able to check out all this stuff for yourself and be able to build it in your castle if you want to. But as I said, the important part with these stairs is that we actually connect up all these different walkways. Basically, the challenge is making it so that these steps actually match with the doors, so the door doesn't end up being in the middle of this block. If we continue up by the windows right here, we get to another doorway, which isn't very decorated in here, I have to admit, but you can actually get over onto this walkway right here into where the throne room's gonna be. This, of course, lets us get out over here onto the staircase, but we can also continue up all the way up through the tower. And if we continue up to the top here, you guys are gonna see exactly why I had to extend this entrance right here, because otherwise we couldn't really get this to match. Next up is, of course, the other tower right here, and I'm gonna show you guys what was a little bit bit difficult to show in the replay mod. Once we get in here, we have both of these doorways leading off to the different corridors. This means that we do have a bit of a section around here where we can walk around and get to the different sides. I am, of course, going to have to do something with these sections and connect up some staircases here. And then if we go over to the other side, we've got this corridor that leads all the way over to the throne room as well. So it's very interconnected. If we, however, choose to go up the staircase here instead, I did put a little painting here as you guys saw. From there, we can move our way over to the first floor here where we have some sections going out into the walkways once again. Basically just trying to make this castle as interconnected as possible. And if we continue on up, we get to the large window here with a great view of the tower. We also have a good way to get out on the balcony facing the church over here. And if we upped the render distance, we would of course see the huge mountain with the Ventia castle in the back. And then if we continue on up, I had to extend the staircase here a bit because otherwise it wouldn't have fit, but we have it perfectly connecting up so that we can get out onto the tower here. It also has just a little section for a guard to sit here and maybe write some notes. And honestly, this is just an excuse to use candles, which is my favorite decoration in the game. Moving on, we have to tackle one of the bigger spaces in the castle and one of the most important to get any castle build just right. I'm of course talking about the throne room, and as you can see, I section off the room with a few pillars just so that we can more easily put in a staircase to get up to the second floor. And I do feel that interior decorating in Minecraft is more an exercise in geometry than anything else, making sure you can fit everything you need into the space you have. As you can see, we connected the stairs down to the wall there as well. I then decided to build this top floor section that connects up to the grand balcony, but it also doubles up as sort of an indoor balcony where guards can keep track of what's going on. Now for the ceiling, since I've used a lot of the darker textures in the rest of the room, I wanted to go with the white quartz just to give a bit more light to the place. And now that I've basically put in the floor plan, it's time to put the details in and add the red carpet and our Ventian throne. I also threw in some less conventional greenery, but we've got to stay true to that Ventian vibe. And so here we are. The throne room is complete, but I did make a few changes. I added a bit of greenery outside here as well, and as you can see, I've racked up quite the shulker monster just doing this interior job. But now that we walk in, we have this nice little entrance leading to the red carpet, and we have the grand room right in front of us. I also love how these pillars stretching all the way up to the ceiling makes the place feel a bit more grand and larger than it actually is, because we didn't start out with that much space to begin with. But personally, I feel like it simultaneously feels quite homey and regal at the same time. And that's, I think, exactly the vibe we want to go for. We have this little staircase going down here connecting to the wall, connecting to the rest of the castle. Then if we instead go upstairs, and this was the part that was the most difficult to figure out, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doors, 4 of which are on different levels. So just connecting them all up was kind of a nightmare, but as you can see, I sort of figured out how to do it. This door right here leading out into this wall, which has a great view of the ocean and our little sailboat. And if we want an even better view of the ocean, we can go over here, and this area as well would have a great view of the Ventian castle if I just upped my render distance. Yep, it's all coming into view. Give it a second. Yep, I just maxed out my render distance, and as you can see, all of Ventia is slowly but surely coming into view. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about the throne room down in the comments as well, but for now, we need to move on, and as you can see, we've got this section right here that I've actually planned is going to be for a staircase, because we need to do something with this area down here, and I think the best use of it would be to make it a guard's barracks. And so I need to kind of figure out how I want to do that. We do, of course, have this room over here, so let me get to some building, and I will be right back with you guys. Starting us off with the guard's barracks, I decided to build up some walls to make the room a little bit smaller and continue on building these pillars all the way from the floor to the ceiling to give that illusion of height. Once I'd constructed the dark oak walls, it was time to decide what to do with the ceiling, and I didn't want to do the same thing as upstairs with the white ceilings. Instead, I went with a dark black stone to make it a little bit more dim and grungy down here. I then decorated the sleeping quarters with these 3-story bunk beds, giving a little bit of privacy with those banners. After that, it was time to continue building the vaulted black stone ceiling going from pillar to pillar. And to make sure there's enough light down here, I decided to build a simpler wooden chandelier as well as this shelf with some decorative armor. And with that, I'd finished the sleeping quarters for our guards, so I moved on to the study, which is this back room over here. I made the decision to trade in the awkward shape of the room for this circular shape instead, continuing with the gloomy wooden theme with red highlights. Okay, the Knights barracks are built, and as you can see, we have this system to where we can close the trapdoors if we don't want access to down there. But to get down, we walk down these steps, and I think it's a lovely atmosphere. It is a little bit darker, but I think it's super fitting. We've got this little library and study area, and I was thinking about maybe putting a table here in the middle or something so the soldiers could play cards or just pass their off time. But anyway, now that we've finished building the entire throne room section, we can go over here where I've actually cleaned up my mess of shulker boxes, that's where they were, and we can move on to bigger and better parts of the castle. The only part that we're missing right now is the big tower right here, and this is gonna take some doing. Now here is the awkward situation that we're faced with right here. This door and that door right there are on very different levels. We also need to be able to get into the castle through that door right there, and they're all on different levels. And so it's gonna be kind of impossible to include this area into the grand dining hall, which means we're gonna have to make it a bit smaller and have kind of an entrance area over here. Overall, I think that's just going to be the best way to do it. And so to divide off these spaces, I'm going to have to place some of these pillars. I think we'll start in the corners right here. These pillars right here are eventually going to be going all the way up. But for now, I think we're just going to go with 7 blocks. Having this in place is just going to make things a lot easier, but for now, I think we need to start by replacing this floor and getting into the build. And this is definitely the biggest part of the castle to decorate. Not only is the entire tower huge, but just this bottom room where we have the feast hall is giant. For the floor, I opted for a checkered pattern of polished diorite and polished deep slate. I then put a red carpet in the middle and started building a ceiling for the entrance area. And in the entrance area is where I decided to put the stairway down to the kitchen, after which I added a few candles, paintings, a smaller crystal chandelier, and of course some food carts. Once the entrance hall was fully decorated, it's time to take on the feast hall itself. And I honestly didn't have that much space to build the grandest feast hall ever, but I still think it came out pretty awesome with these 2 log tables and of course a table for the king and queen. I ended up decorating with some of the huge paintings and of course that Ventia signature greenery that we can't leave out. I then made some larger flags using multiple banners, and I know some of you are probably wondering why they're not white and cyan like Ventia is supposed to be, and the reason for that is pretty complex lore-wise, and I could tell you guys if you want in a future video. Other than that though, finishing up the feast hall here, I added a giant chandelier. Since we have the space for it, why not? It's a great decoration, and I think it came out awesome. It was then time to tackle the stairway going all the way up to the top of the tower with the multiple rooms on the way, and the most difficult part here was actually connecting up the earliest areas. There are so many doors on so many different Y levels to connect that it was very difficult, but once we got to this layer right here, it started to be a bit easier, and I could spiral up the staircase with a few different floors on the way. This first one just connecting up the 4 turrets that we got on each side of the castle. On that floor, I went for a pretty simple design with just some shelving, some pots, and of course my favorite, the candles. But on the next floor, I wanted to do something a little bit unconventional. Being a huge fan of The Witcher 3, there of course needed to be a bathroom with a giant wooden tub. And building something like this, you inevitably get a few dimensions wrong, and so I had to rebuild a few walls and things here and there, but in the end, I think it came out so awesome, and I could start working on the top floor, which is probably what I'm most proud of. And starting us off up here, I needed to make the staircase a bit safer, and then make the walls entirely wooden, and we've got so much space to work with up here. After getting the walls and floor tidy, I needed to make a proper ceiling, and so I went with this nether brick and stone brick design that I think came out very well. We then have this very interesting room shape to work with, these 4 corners of the room that I decided to make kind of into mini rooms themselves, starting out with this corner right here, which I decided to turn into a bit of an open wardrobe, or at least something resembling it for the king himself. Moving on to the next tower, it's probably my least favorite, but it needed to be done because every king needs a study or somewhere to write your memoirs. Maybe I'm personally just too big a fan of Marcus Aurelius, but it was a good way to fill one of these corners that made sense. Speaking of which, we're now moving on to a corner that certainly doesn't make sense because I really wanted this top floor to have a fireplace just because of how cozy it's gonna be. So I made sure that there's a spot for the king and queen to sit and eat their grapes in front of an open flame. After that, I moved on to the final corner, which is definitely the least conventional, but probably my favorite out of the bunch. I decided to build an entire mini tree with some cages for some parrots, which was definitely the most annoying part of this entire build. Getting those guys in place was a bit of a project. And so there only remained to fill the center of the room with this giant bed with a purple and white color scheme. But guys, I think it's time I show you all this in first person, so I will see you on the other side. And so here we are at the end of the build, and as you can see, the shulker monster is pretty despicable. I have a lot of cleaning up to do after this, but we are done with the castle. There are still a few things like the kitchen down below here, and some other little details that I implore you guys to explore on your own. I don't want to show you guys everything because, of course, there needs to be something that's a secret for next episode when I give out the world download for free to you guys. So definitely look out for that, but for now, check it out, guys. This looks so amazing. I'm extremely happy with how this came out, and I think the coolest part is definitely upstairs at the top of the castle. Coming over here to the main entrance, I know it was a bit difficult to see what was going on when I was building all this, so I figured I'd show you guys exactly what it's like. If we come through here, we can of course get to this wall overlooking the village. I actually really love the view of both the oasis and the library over there. This looks so amazing. However, if we go back inside, I did add a few paintings here as well, but if we go upstairs, we have this little room right here, which takes us out either to the balcony right here to get an even better view of what we just looked at, or we can continue on up this way, which will take us up to this floor that has all of the doors going out to the individual turrets. And for this room, I decorated it pretty plainly, but I do love this sort of chocolate pattern ceiling. And if we move on to the next floor, we of course have the bathroom. Now, does it make any particular sense to have a bathroom this high up in a tower? Probably not, because you have to carry all this water up here, but it's royalty. I mean, come on, you can do whatever you want when you're the king. And we got a few towels here, a few that are folded up in the form of snow. I think that's such a good use of snow, to be honest, and just a bit of storage over here. I can finally relax after all this building. This has been insane. But going up to the final floor and my favorite, we of course have the parrots up here, and you guys were such a pain to get up here. I never want to do that again, but they do look awesome with the different tropical colors. We also have this little corner over here with the fireplace that I think came out so cozy, and the bed, of course. I'm really happy with how this came out. It's so cozy, and it has all this greenery to really represent Ventia. I mean, it's pretty much just perfect. It's exactly the way I wanted it. And that, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, is the interior of the village castle. This project took me way longer than I expected it to, and I'm very happy to be done with it so that we can move on to the insane plans I have for Ventia going forward. And if you'd like to build this interior for your own castle, the download is of course coming with the next video, so don't miss out on that. But other than that, I hope you decide to subscribe to see more of this survival world. And as always, if you stayed all the way to the end, then you're the champ, and I appreciate your existence. And until we see each other next time, have a good one.